You can't wish for people to accept for you to change, yet you don't accept people when they show you a different side of them. Your goal as a friend or as a person in someone's life is not to mold a person into the being you want to be. That is one of the qualities that I love in people. People who do not have a certain idea of you that they keep in their brain, and as soon as you deviate from the path that they have chosen for you, that they start reproaching you for it. You guys are a little up close and personal. Okay, so hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Demalia, and on this channel we just talk. So let's get into the meat of today's video. Before we go any further, this is not a Stanley, this is a dupe. Since we're boycotting, and second of all, it's just too expensive, so I would never do that. Give people the chance to reintroduce themselves. And I'm saying this from a perspective of a person who has not only given people in my life the chance to reintroduce themselves to me, but I've been also extended the grace from some people to let me introduce myself to them. And I'm going to try to speak on it on both perspectives. I realize that is one of the qualities that I love in people, to have people who do not have a certain idea of you that they keep in their brain, and as soon as you deviate from the path that they have chosen for you, that they start reproaching you for it. And when I take a quick survey, specifically the people that have been in my life for the longest time, at least have seen me or my journey over the span of a decade, I can say that most of them, if they have one quality in common, is the fact that they let you grow and they give you your space to kind of figure out yourself. And especially as a person in their early 20s, at 11 you barely know who you are. Like, most of us were following trends, doing things just because people were doing it. I don't know about you guys, but when I was younger, like when a shoe was popular, every single person would have it, boy, girl. They just wanted to have a thing just because everyone had it, which is very similar to how we act. A lot of us were not bad people. A lot of us were not gangsters. A lot of us were not class clowns. A lot of us were not disrespectful people. But as soon as we saw that that's cool, that's what boosts our social status, that's what makes our peers like us, then we continue doing it. I'm all for letting people grow and to also figure themselves out, insofar that it does not affect your moral compass. If you're a person who's in my life and you're also going through like a cathartic stage, like rebrand yourself, I'm all for it. Insofar that it does not affect me. And I don't want this to sound selfish, but when I say me, I don't mean in a way where I feel uncomfortable with how you're living your life. You can do whatever you want. Part of loving people is also learning to let go and learning to let people do their things. I heard this beautiful quote where they say, if you love someone, you can't prevent them from going to venture out the ocean or to swim in the ocean. What you can do is be there, but give them a life jacket. If you love someone, you can't just shelter them. Like, you have to be able to love them enough to be like, hey, I don't want you to swim in the ocean, but you know, you're gonna do it anyway, but here's a life jacket, here's some tips if something goes wrong. The only condition I have that I don't accept is when their change impedes me negatively. I could paint a picture. Let's say I'm friends with you and, you know, we grew up together or whatever. As you start growing up, you start being surrounded by the wrong crowd and you have questionable people around you. So, you know, you put your health in danger, your safety in danger, and I put my safety in danger just by proxy of being with you. These are one of the things that I don't accept. Like, if it's because you're venturing a new hobby, or I don't know, you're venturing a new spiritual path, I can't tell you what to do. But if it's affecting me, as in being with questionable, shady people who are not safe, or let's say you start consuming certain things that put me in danger when I'm with you. So when I'm with you, you're on substances and you're the one who's supposed to drive me home. You know what I mean? So as long as it's a change, I don't want to misstep and say as long as it's a change for the better, because who are you to decide what is better for someone? All of the missteps I've made in my life have culminated in me being someone else. So I would never say as long as they're changing positively. You can never know, because that might be the first step in the direction of positivity. Although through your perspective, it might not look like this person is going on a good path, but who are you to know? But what you do know is the things you tolerate or not. If these people were meant to be in your life, it would not be an issue. A true form of love is letting people kind of venture into things and just be there for them. And depending on which kind of direction they're swaying, you can only be there for them to a certain extent. You can also lose yourself in the process. Of what's very interesting about the term reintroducing yourself is the fact that when someone introduces themselves to you, you have the choice to accept or not accept the person in your life. So if the person reintroduces themselves to you in a manner that it's not, you don't see yourself continuing, or you don't see this person being part and parcel of your life, you are allowed at that point to be like, okay, I mean, I'm all for it. I'm happy for you. I'm happy for the path in life you're taking. But you know what? It just does not align with the way I'm kind of seeing my life and the way I'm seeing my progression. I remember one of the causes that concretized an already drifting relationship I had a few years back is the fact that whenever I think of this person, I would think of the fact that they always, in a sense, had a perception of me that they were not willing to let go of. And this is a perception of me that was, if I can say, years old. I was in a state where, like, looking back, I felt like I was walking the route to kind of change how I perceive life. This person will always keep on dragging me back to how I was 5 years prior. One of the examples that I think for me was, you know, it might seem small to someone, but for me, that really made me reevaluate that connection, was the fact that at that point, it was a very pivotal time in my life where I say modesty has actually changed my life. And I think that's going to be another video in itself. Or to give you guys a little bit of context, I've always been Muslim. I've grown up Muslim. I've been raised Muslim. But I've made the conscious choice to choose Islam a little bit later in life. And mind you, I was hijabi. I was wearing the hijab. I was, say, observing modesty to the standards that I thought were modest at the time. Funny enough, I think people have a awakening where something, you know, big happens in their life and then they connect back to God. But for me, it was actually the fact that I was being bombarded with so many different cues from different religious paths. And it was like, I remember one week, like, one person from a certain faith came up to me 3 times talking to me about that faith. I'm like, wait, let's hold on a second. It made me really reevaluate Islam. So I'll go into that about a little bit of my journey with, like, growing with Islam and then choosing it for myself. But at that moment in time is the time where I started to observe modesty. And it was like a very weird time for me because I think it was post-pandemic. I kind of was a little bit more in tune with myself. It's a time where I took a year off social media. I, at that time, thought modesty just meant you were covered. Modesty just meant that you couldn't see a piece of skin. I did not really consider anything that was skin tight to be, you know, immodest. Honestly, as well, the way my body's shaped, like, I mean, that just did not work. There came a time where I was just contemplating. I remember the first day I decided to wear a dress. And mind you, dress was not in my vocabulary. I was, you know, your typical sneakerhead. I really like athleisure, sportwear. Also growing up with a lot of body dysmorphia, I really did wear body hugging stuff just to feel better about myself. Which I feel like modesty really liberated me from that. But again, a topic for another day. We decide to go shopping and I meet up with these people. And as soon as I pull up with my first ever dress that I've ever worn in front of them, mind you, this was not even like years later into my journey where I'd wear like more, not just dresses, but more modester dresses, if you can say, dresses that are less figure hugging. Like, it was just like a regular summer dress. And this person came and looked at me and they were like, since when do you wear dresses? And honestly, I just felt so belittled and so small in that moment because I felt like I was bound to this version of myself where I could never change and I would never be able to dress modestly. It felt so uncomfortable because I'm like, this person is never going to see me as a project. It's one thing if a person sees you as a positive trait, but if they see you as a person who, no, you can never be modest. Like, you love your body too much. Like, who are you? Like, I just felt so bad about myself. And that day, the things were already kind of like clicking in my brain where I was like, wait, like, you don't need someone to like flat out insult you or flat out do something huge for you to start, you know, distancing yourself from that person. But on the other hand, I remember the other people who were present were kind of like, oh, like, I didn't know you wore dresses. Like, it wasn't kind of like on a condescending tone, and that was the difference, because you can tell when someone's like you're not even gonna survive in it. Another situation as well is, let's not front. Back when we were younger, the best thing to do was just, you know, gossip and talk about who's with who, what's the situation, who's this girl, what she's doing. And I remember when I was also in the cusp of that moment in my life, an individual came up to me with some kind of like information about someone. I was at a point where actually like paying more attention to like the scripture of my faith, and, you know, I didn't know how bad it was to like backbite on people. So this person came up to me with like something, wasn't even that interesting, but it was something about someone that I wasn't particularly fond of. And I was like, yeah, like I honestly don't really want to talk about this. So I told them, yeah, I think I would like for us to change conversation. So it's like, who do you think you are? Like, you literally are the person who like, so you think you're better than that? You think you're holier than thou? And that's where I realized, like, as much as I would maybe love this person, I love the experiences I have with this person, I genuinely feel like they're a fun person to be around. I just could not bring that baggage with me because they never gave me the space to reintroduce myself. In contrast to people who have known me literally maybe even the same amount of time or even more, have given me the grace. I'm probably sure in their heads they were having this thing going in, but it's one thing having this dialogue in your head and telling someone and like belittling their efforts. Like when I was drawing a dress, belittling my efforts. When I was trying to steer away from certain types of conversation, belittling my efforts. One example of someone who constantly sees you reinvent yourself and gives you the chance to reintroduce yourself are your parents, at least I would say in healthier households. If you compare me to how I was 5 years ago, I think you would see two different people. Like my habits, like, you know, the frequency in which I leave my house and stuff like that, or the perception of I have my family, or how important my family is to me. These are things that have really changed throughout this years. So ultimately, you have to give people the opportunity to introduce themselves, and also it goes hand in hand. You can't wish for people to accept for you to change, yet you don't accept people when they show you a different side of them. Your goal as a friend or as a person in someone's life, or even if that's a relationship, is not to mold a person into the being you want to be. The saying I think really applies when they say misery loves company. Most of the time when you're trying to level up or when you're trying to become a better person, that's when people want you to believe that you cannot change. That's when people want you to believe that you are a bad person, and no matter the efforts you do, you're always going to be that way. And it's because they don't want to be alone. If they can make you feel like you're never going to change, you're still going to gossip, you're still going to dress a certain way, it's just because they don't want to let go of this way they are. And that's also tied to another video that I'll also put the card in here. Their perception of you shouldn't matter. The last thing I'm going to end with is I remember as well, most of the things, like, I feel like the things I've been through when I was younger can definitely help you all. So that's why, like, I really refer back to the past, because honestly, where else would you refer to? I remember specifically when I understood that people's perceptions of you has nothing to do with you, and it has all to do with them, and they're telling on themselves when they tell you how they feel about you. I was friends with this person, and honestly, it was like a friendship that like just spawned out of nowhere. And I was talking to this person, and this person told me, I hated you, and it's very funny because if you ask the people closer to me and you ask the people that were distant from me, like not even friends with me, like just knew me, and they say this, I'm like, hey, I can definitely say that people change and people are better. And I told this person that, and I told them straight up, I was like, hey, people are not perfect. People can change. To say that you've been perfect from the day you were birthed to now is like a stretch. No one is that way. But there's some things I can't accept from your narrative. You have to distance what you thought of me without knowing me and your preconceived notions of me and me. Because just because you thought that of me doesn't mean I inhabited those behaviors. You know, a lot of times we have to be honest with ourselves, especially when there's a distance and you don't know a certain person. You kind of project ideas onto them. Like, so it's like, you didn't know me. This is our first year talking to each other. So you cannot come to me and tell me that, like, I like you more now. No. It's because you know me now. You didn't know me before. Before you were assuming things about me, but now that you know me, like, you know that that wasn't who I was, and that was who you thought I were, because you never talked to me. I think that's the difference, because if a person who has seen you throughout the formative years of your life tells you something like that, has more value because they've seen you from point A to point B, and they can empirically tell you that I like how you are now. Like, maybe this is a character trait that I didn't like before, but now. But someone who did not know you from a can of paint, and now that you're becoming, you know, acquaintances or friends with them, and they're telling you, yeah, you were like this before, I'm happy you changed. I'm like, you didn't know me. You just assumed things of me because you were my friend, and now that you're my friend, now you realize that the things you thought of me were not true. So don't project those onto me. Sum this up, you have to give people the chance to reintroduce themselves, and it goes both ways. The same way you want to be given the leeway to be like, hey, you know what, I don't engage in this anymore, can you respect my wishes, is the same way you have to also stop holding ideas of people you have, especially if they are showing that they want to change, that they want to grow. If someone was a horrible person in the past, who's to say that they're not going to be a good person now? And who are you to tell the person not to? Misery loves company. So most of the time when people are trying to deter you from a path of greatness, is because they know that their path is very short. They know that they're going to take the path taken, and you're on to the path the less taken. Lastly, I would say, don't let people's perceptions of you be you. I wasn't the most sharpened pencil in the pencil case when I was younger. I used to let a lot of things slide. I can question so many things that I did back when I was younger, but that's one thing I'll always feel like I ate for, as when I told that girl, hey, I'm all for building new bridges. Now we actually like each other. Now we're actually friends. But you have to be careful about saying things about how I was and how I wasn't. For a fact, A, you were never in my life. You didn't know who I was as a person. You were definitely with people who did not like me. Do you think you know me, or do you think you know what they think of me? And it's that age old when people say, hey, like when I didn't know you, I thought you were such a mean girl. But no, you didn't know me, so you just projected these ideas onto me. Giving people the chance to reintroduce themselves, you're not obliged to accept who they are, but you still do have that choice, and you should extend that to people so that you also, get that in return. They say, do to others as you want it to be done to you. So that's the end of this video. I hope to see you guys in the next video. So take care, stay safe, all the best. Namaya.